Hi everyone, Phil from Tech for Tech. Today we're going to be looking at this CRONUS case. It's called the Athena. It's basically a silent case. So it's got soundproofing in there, some low-speed fans to keep it nice and quiet. So we're going to have a look at it and see how it performs. We've got links in the description just below if you're interested in checking out the prices or purchasing it. Okay, so we've got the case here for the Athena. It is a silent mid-tower case, so I'm hoping that means it's got sound dampening, and it's made by CRONUS. Can't see much else other than a drawing of the case on the front. On the side, it does show you the specifications there. Okay, key features. It's a silent case with soundproofing. Built-in sound dampening materials will keep your system quiet without restricting airflow. Cooling supports up to 6 fans with 2 times 120mm black fans included. Also supports water cooling up to 240mm on the front and 120 on the rear. I/O panel as well is hid behind an easy access area. It's got 2 USB 2 and 1 USB 3 ports, as well as HD audio and your usual power buttons. The case is a mid-tower. Motherboard support is ATX, micro ATX and mini ITX. It's made of 0.55mm of steel. The panels have got sound dampening on the front, top, left and right side. The top panel can be removed for additional airflow if you wish. It's got 2 3.5-inch bays, 2 2.5-inch bays, and it says combo tray within PSU shroud as well. It's got 7 expansion slots. That's basically telling you how many PCI slots there are available. Cooling on the front, it can support 3 120mm. On the top, it can support 2 120mm, and on the rear, it can support 1 120mm. Bear in mind, there's already 2 fans included, one on the front and one on the back. The I/O ports, it comes with 1 USB 3, 2 USB 2, a HD audio, a power button, and a reset button. The clearance on there for the cable management is 22mm. GPU max length is 310, and the CPU cooler is 160mm. The product's dimensions in length, width, height is 340mm by 200 by 449. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the case. So there's not a huge amount to see on the outside. So this panel is, well, it's pretty plain, to be honest with you, which you expect from a silent case, because the less holes, the better, because you're not going to hear what it sounds like on the inside. You do have some ventilation down here, which isn't too bad, actually, for minimal ventilation. The front, again, pretty plain, not much to see here. You also got a little gap just underneath as well. We'll just look at that in a few seconds. Same on this side, ventilation there, not much to see on this side at all. On the back, it looks like pretty much like a standard case, in all honesty. You have got a hole for your I/O there, so that's for obviously where your motherboard's going to be. You do have one empty expansion bay there, which doesn't seem to have anything in it. There might be a spare plate inside to block it up, and then you've got your power supply there. Would have liked to have seen some probably sound dampening on the actual expansion card slots there as well. It would have been probably a little bit nice. You can see that on a few cases, but still. You can see the fan there. It's a plain black 120mm fan on there as well, and the sides are basically screwed on with thumb screws, which, okay, 3 of them you're going to need a screwdriver to get off, of the other one seems to be pretty loose, so they're not really much good as thumb screws until you've actually unscrewed them. Right, on the top, you do have your I/O panel there. So you've got USB 3, you've got USB 2, you've got another USB 2 there, you've got your microphone and headphone socket there, so they're individuals, not combined. You've got a load light as well as power light, reset button, and a power button. Nice clicky buttons. On top, this is sound dampening. It's not a piece of carpet, okay? But it does look like a bit of carpet, and it doesn't look the most well fitted, in all honesty. It just looks like someone stuck a bit of carpet on the top or something like that, or a house mat or something. But it is sound. Stop the noise coming through the top of the case, because it does have room here to mount a couple of fans, which these fans, in all honesty, have got very little airflow coming through there if you did use that for that. But if you didn't want to, you can just put the sound dampening mat on top and away you go. Otherwise, on the bottom of the case, let's have a look at that. On the bottom, you have a dust cover for your power supply, which I'm not the biggest fan of these. They can be a bit of a pain to take off and put back on. I prefer the ones that just slide on and out, because to clean that off, you've got to turn the case upside down to get it off, which can be a bit of a pain. There are some screws here, so I'm guessing the hard drive shroud or the hard drive bays can be removed from the inside, but otherwise that looks pretty basics for the outside of the case. And yeah, you have got 4 feet as well, which are rubberized, and they're quite thick rubber, so that should help stop any vibrations on the table. Okay, both side panels do have sound dampening on there. I would only say they're only probably about 1.5, maybe 2 millimeters thick, the sound dampening. So it's not the thickest, but it's something at least. It should be enough to stop quite a few low vibrations and different noises from motors and fan noise, hopefully. So that's good. You do have that obviously on both sides. So that's on the motherboard side and on the side where you obviously access it from. There isn't any on the top apart from this mat, which is optional. There's none on the bottom and there's none on the back. There is some on the front though, which does cover probably about, I don't know, 60% of the front, if that. So there is sound dampening there, so it will help a little bit. So it's better than nothing. So the thing what we're going to find with this case more than likely is going to be airflow issues, if anything, mainly because it's like anything else, to be honest. If you want a high airflow something, it means you're going to have to sacrifice things like sound. So obviously if you want a quiet case, then you're sacrificing the high airflow and so on. So you've got to have it one way or another. If you spend quite a lot more, yes, you will maybe be able to get there and get some really high top-end fans, which some of the fans can cost individually near enough as much as this case does, including everything what's here. So it's really up to you on your budgets, how quiet you actually want it. But we're going to test it in a few minutes and see what it's like. So let's have a look what else we've got inside. Okay, so this is the innards of the actual case. It does come with a pack of screws, cable ties, phone screws as well in there, so you should have everything you need there. Most of them do seem to be black, apart from the risers, which are gold, which you're generally not going to see them anyway, because you'll have motherboard on top of them. Otherwise, you've got a shroud at the bottom. This is what I don't understand. What's the point in having a shroud in a silent case, in all honesty? You may say it's to do with airflow or whatever. To be honest, for me, it's just in the way. It's just taking up room. You don't actually need. And why it's got ventilation holes on the side, no idea, because that's going to be up against the side of the panel, which has got the dampening, so you're not really going to take advantage of that. So I suppose you could use it to attach a couple of hard drives on top or something like that. That may be what it's there for, but in all honesty, I'm not a fan of shrouds inside cases. But you can't see the inside of anyway. The whole idea is to hide the power supply to make it look neater. But if you can't see in it, there's nothing to hide. So next up, we've got the fans. So you've got 2 fans here. They are pretty standard black fans. The model number, if anyone wants to know, is 12025L12S, and they're DC 12 volts. So pretty straightforward. As we said, you can fit 3 fans on there. Only 120mm versions though. You can't put 140s in there, which would have been nicer to get 140mm versions in there, because 140mm versions of fans are generally quieter than the 120, because they're larger, so they don't have to spin as fast to shove the same amount of air through. So bigger fans generally equals more quiet. You do have some nice holes in the shroud though for cabling, which is good. I would have liked one probably about there to put a power supply cable going to the graphics card. It would have been nice, but you haven't got that ability there, but still it's okay. You do have cutouts here, which is probably hard to see. There's a cutout there and there, so you can put cable in through. So again, that's pretty nice. You've also got cutout at the top where you would put your 8-pin connection for your motherboard CPU there as well, and a nice cutout for the back of your motherboard, so if you need to change the CPU cooler you can do. And it's got a few tie down places as well on there, so nothing really to write home about. It's nothing special, but it has got the ability there. On the reverse side, on the back, we'll get to the cables in a minute, you do have a nice bit of room down here for channeling cables, which is good. So you basically hide all those cables in there. Gives you plenty of room, but that's only this area here. Once you get to this bit, if you've got short cables have to go over, you've pretty much got no room to put any of the cable in. So it could be a little bit messy potentially if you are having to take cables at that sort of angle or that angle, for example. But again, there shouldn't be too many. Apart from the 8-pin, what you would connect to your CPU power supply, that's going to have to route down the edge here somehow, possibly, which may stretch, because a lot of the time, because of the length of the cables, you have to go diagonally. So it doesn't give you a lot of room. You do have your hard drive bay down here as well. It is a little wobbly, to be honest with you. It's not most sturdy, which is making me wonder if you'll get any vibrations off of that or not. For a silent case, I would have thought it'd been a little bit more sturdy. But again, that can be removed if you are not using it. So that's a sort of an advantage or disadvantage, depending on the way you look at it. As we've said, you can fit drives on top of the shroud as well. So if you want to, you don't have to just use that. You could put some on top of the shroud, depending on how many bays you're using up and so forth. You may obviously got 2 graphics cards in there or lots of PCI cards in there. You may potentially not have room to add those onto the top of the shroud. To the cabling, it's pretty straightforward cabling. The cabling for the fans is standard daisy chained fans. It's PWM connector, so that means it adjusts the speed depending on what your motherboard tells it to do. Pretty straightforward. You've got your USB 3, which is standard. You've got your front panel or your I/O panel connectors, which is standard. You've got your HD audio. Okay, I'm not a fan of rainbow cables, to be honest. I'm going to let you off because you can't see inside it, so no one's going to be able to see these, but I do prefer them all black, especially when you've done the rest of everything else black. You might as well have gone the full length, and the same with the USB connections. But that's pretty much it for the insides of the case. Okay, so as you can see here, we've got the machine built up. We've got the cabling all done. We've got it as neat as it can. This channel is a pretty good idea. The catch is the cables, what they come with, it's really hard to get round the corner at the bottom. So you have to put some real pressure on it to get them round without damaging, obviously, the connectors' ends when they're in the motherboard or damaging the motherboard. So it does sort of bulge out a little bit there if you're not careful. Also, again, for most power supplies, the 8-pin connection, like we said, has to run up here, or it would have to run up that way. And again, you've only got so much room on the cable without using extenders, which most people won't be using. It does bulge out a little bit, does stick out a little bit to the side of the case. So when you try to get the side on the case, but again, because you have got this mat on there to dampen the sound, it does take up a bit of the room as well. So when you try to get it on, it is a little bit of a balancing act. So what I'm going to do is ask Jen, the camera woman of today, if she can pass me over the tape. Right, I'll need a knife. And the hammer. Right, so these are all the things you need to get the side on because it's going to be quite difficult. Okay, as you can see, the tape, hammer and knife solution actually worked, and it looks pristine. You wouldn't notice otherwise. I'm kidding, to be honest. You can fit it on. It is a bit tight. You have to really lay the case down on its side. Pretty much sit on it like you would on a suitcase when you're traveling to going abroad and you can't fit everything all in one bag. It does go on, but it is a little bit tight, and you do have to hold it down and then screw the 2 screws in. Okay, so we've got the machine all built up, as you can see here. It didn't have too much of an issue, nothing that a bit of masking tape and the hammer wouldn't fix. No, in all honesty, everything went on, just a little bit of a squeeze getting that back panel on with obviously the cable in the way we've said. If you are using a power supply, I'd suggest you use flat black cabling on the power supply. It would probably help a little bit better, but it did all go in the end, so there shouldn't be too much of an issue unless you're using a really low-end power supply, which has got really short cabling, which could cause a few issues. Otherwise, the only real issues came across was fitting the motherboard in. The fan was in the way, but we get that quite often on cases, so you have to take the fan out to get the motherboard in. Otherwise, it was pretty much okay. There's nothing really special or issues or anything like that, so everything fits and did everything it needs to do. The fans are all connected up. They're using the normal fan connection, the PWM connections on the motherboard. So we've got the fans at the moment set at 50% speed, so you'll know when we do turn it on in a second, exactly how loud it is if on general use. Okay, so what we're doing now is going to test the decibel levels of the actual case to see how quiet it actually is. The room levels at the moment are around about 40 decibels, just to show you. Okay, low 39, so it gives you a rough idea. So what we're going to do is hold this a good distance, probably around about 20 centimeters away from the case, and turn it on. Bear in mind, the only fans that are running is the one on the back, the one on the front, what comes with a case. There is one on the CPU, but that is going to be running at low speed, and the one on the power supply doesn't actually start going until it gets to a certain wattage, which we won't be using, and the ones on the graphics cards don't spin until it's in use as well. So the only noise you're going to get off from the fans what are built into the front and the back, maybe a little bit from the CPU. So let's have a look and see what sort of noise levels we get. As you can see there, it's fluctuating around about 44 decibels. So yes, it does make a noise. It isn't totally silent. But in all honesty, in the average household or office, you're probably not going to hear it over the normal noise levels. Bear in mind, this room we're in at the moment is very quiet. We've got soundproofing all the way through for recording purposes. So you will find that it is quieter than your average house or average office. So in reality, as long as you're not making the machine run flat out, you're not going to notice much of a difference. Regarding the airflow, we did a couple of basic airflow tests. You are getting a bit of air coming in through these gaps. It's actually slightly better than some of the gaming models we're seeing with big RGB lights, so there's more ventilations along the side than some of the others. But otherwise, there's not much to look at. In all honesty, if you take this mat off the top, it doesn't seem to make any more noise than if it's on top of it there, to be honest with you. But again, it depends on the specification and how you have it. If you want it in the quietest, it may be best just leaving it on the top. Worst case scenario, if you want to take your shoes off, you can always wipe them on the mat on the top of this computer. Thank you for watching this video, everyone. It's really appreciated you made it all the way to the end. Please make sure you subscribe, like, comment, and even click that bell so you get notifications of new videos and live streams. It does help support the channel, and supporting the channel basically means that we can release more content for you and also better quality content going forward. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.